There's a slight delay in the live stream, but we are live streaming now. Can't actually start the meeting till 2 p.m. because that was the declared time.
Righto. Right to go?
Right to go, Mr. Mayor.
Well, welcome everybody to Snowy Valleys Council ordinary meeting of the 18th of June 2020 via video link. We'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay our respects to the elders past and present. This meeting is live streamed on Council's website to allow the community to follow Council debates and decisions. Members of the public participating in the meeting agree to have their image, voice and personal information, including name and address, recorded and publicly broadcast. Snowy Valleys Council does not accept liability for any defamatory remarks or inappropriate comments that are made during the course of the meeting. Council is currently operating under the temporary provision of section 447A of the Local Government Act, which allows for online meetings, and the provision of the Act takes precedence over any conflicts with the adopted Snowy Valleys Code of Meeting Practice. Councillors, apologies and leave of absence. I have leave of absence from Councillor Risselman and Councillor Benjamin. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Wright and Councillor Smith. All in favour? That's unanimous, thank you. Declarations of pecuniary interest, councillors? No one. Public, there is no public forum. Confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting 21st of May 2020. Councillor Wright, Councillor Ham. Anything arising?
Yes.
Councillor Smith.
On the 21st May, or in the 21st of May meeting, there was a motion about a climate change adaptation committee. I'd like to ask the question whether such a committee has now been formed and whether we have terms of reference for such a committee.
I'll pass that over to the CEO, Mr. Hyde.
Through the Mayor, I'll pass that to the Executive Director of Corporate and Community, who's progressing that item. Thank you, Paul.
So I'm just completing the, I've just completed the draft terms of reference for that committee, which I will distribute once I've run it past the executive leadership team. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holton. That answer your question, Councillor Smith?
Look forward to seeing that.
Thank you.
On the 28th of May, one of the issues raised was the caravan park cabins at Batlow. And I'm just wondering if there's any progress on the funding for those and whether or not we're now able to use any of them for tourism purposes.
Once again, go directly to Mr. Holton.
Mr. Mayor, I think we should actually, that's on the second item. So if you're going to pass these minutes separately, suggest that we deal with the 21st of May item. And then when we go to the 28th of May, we could answer that question for.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I was on a different page. Okay, so let's put the minutes of the meeting, the May meeting. All in favour? Yeah. That's carried. Which brings me to the extraordinary meeting of the 28th of May. Councillor Smith, you're moving that way?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Ham. Councillor Smith.
Yes, the question regarding the caravan park cabins that we've put into Batlow, whether we now have any progress on the funding for those and or whether we are able now to use them for tourism purposes.
So CEO or Mr. Holton?
I'll start off the second part of the question through the Mayor to Councillor Smith. We are progressing the funding for those cabins. We have escalated some additional information through Regional New South Wales up to the State Housing Committee for Recovery, and hoping that that will be successful. At the moment, we understand the Housing Committee has put most of its time towards the Minderoo pods, and we believe that the Minderoo pods are nearly fully expended now, and we have a number of those coming excuse me, into our area. In regards to the letting of those units, I'll hand over to Mr. Holton for that one.
Thank you, Matt, and through you, Mr. Mayor. We currently have an arrangement in place with with Ray White Real Estate and the Office of Emergency Housing to place people who are in need of accommodation into those units. So they're not yet available for the broad and general public. However, I say that with one exception. There is a meeting of Commonwealth Bank managers in Batlow coming up fairly shortly, where they will actually require 4 cabins for the accommodation for a short period of time. And I'm talking about 2 nights. So I think, you know, I've made a decision to allow that to occur just because it's only for the 2 nights and it's not an ongoing thing. The units will once again be available to for the purposes of accommodating people who require emergency housing. For the Batlow caravan park in general, it will return to sort of normal operations in terms of parking caravans in there and camping there by the end of this month.
That's the good news. That will be before the school holidays, I believe. Thanks. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Nothing further. Councillor Ham.
I just would like clarification in the advocacy plan. I've had people ask, what does an emergency evacuation centre and Tumut Basketball Centre look like in our advocacy plan? What, you know, people were talking, is it as we thought it would have been this time last year, or has that concept changed?
If I may, through the Mayor, Councillor Ham, the original concept that we consulted on back in 2018, it was a much larger and more expensive option. We have pared that back to a option that is back to basics, $5 million facility as opposed to a $20 million facility, but including hopefully in those plans the ability to expand that if there's the need and the funds to expand that facility. So we are drafting the detail up around that advocacy item at the moment, and it is definitely a very different option to what was originally proposed as a basketball and multi-purpose stadium at that site. The concentration is on the fact that it is an evacuation centre. As we saw during the fires earlier this year, we didn't have a facility, central facility to locate people to, and when we held a public meeting in Tumut, we didn't actually have a facility that could accommodate the amount of people that wanted to go and hear the news on what was happening in the area. So the aim is to get something very basic that is size right, that can be used for other things such as basketball, but a very simple structure.
Oh, thanks for that clarification.
Thank you. And I might make the point that this is a community-driven plan. It's been driven by the community for a very long time, and there's a dedicated group of people working on it. So they continue to look for funds and to progress the feasibility of this infrastructure. Councillors, I'll put those minutes all in favour. It's carried. Councillors, that takes us to correspondence. Now, I've had some exciting correspondence, and I'm sure you've all seen in the news that Councillor Wright has been awarded the Order of Australia Medal So I'd like to personally congratulate him, and I'm sure all councillors and staff will join me in that, and very well deserved. And congratulations, Councillor Wright, Order of Australia Medal.
Here.
Yes, congratulations, Bruce.
I'd also like to mention Michael Nayland, who's got the Australian Fire Service Medal, and I've known Michael most of my life, and I believe my father took him to his first fire, so he's got a lot to answer for. And he's been given the Australian Fire Service Medal, and congratulations to Michael on nearly 50 years of firefighting. So very reliable and very well deserved. So congratulations to both those individuals, and we certainly look forward to more members of our community joining the Australian Honours group. Thank you and congratulations. Moving on, no notice of motions or rescissions. Councillors, after having some conversations with Councillor Smith, I have a mayoral minute I'd like to read out to you and present, and looking for a seconder. And that mayoral minute is that council request a report to the July 2020 meeting on the detail of the advocacy plan component of the regional cycling and walking trails master plan. Do I have a seconder?
Yep.
Councillor Pritchard. Thank you, Councillor Pritchard.
It's just that our future really is to, we used to be in the middle of nowhere. Now we're in the middle of major towns, cities in Australia. And these people will be coming here to see our environment, to go on the bushwalking and cycling and general activities. And I think in this time of the COVID virus epidemic, it'll bring more people into the area for their recreational facilities. We need to do it in a well-organised and affordable way, and I think this is the right motion.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard. And so we're looking for 250,000 towards the master plan. I have individually written to Dr. Joe McGurr, I think before Christmas, looking for 50,000 to do a detailed feasibility study and independent business case for the Batlow rail trail proposal. And I believe Dr. McGurr has forwarded that on to the state government, and he's still waiting back on funding for that. So that's where that's up to. And we've got, we've also launched our advocacy plan. So that's where we're up to with the Trails Master Plan. Any other speakers?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of my raising this with you, as you know, has been the activity in Batlow recently and currently. The petition that's going has attracted a lot of attention and a lot of support. And on behalf of the Batlow community, I've raised this issue, and thank you for your dealing with it in this way.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillors, I'll put the motion. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillors, I have a second mayoral minute, which is that we investigate joining the Cities Power Partnership, which is a concept that I think we should be embracing, but I'm asking that we get a report on that just to see that see whether it's going to be advantageous to us, which I believe it should be, and it may well help our new climate committee. So have we got that on screen? Yeah.
I can't share that on screen, but I've got written down here, the council have a report investigating joining the Cities Power Partnership Program.
Fantastic. Thank you. Ooh, no seconder.
I'll second.
I've got I'll take Councillor Cross. Any speakers? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Carried. Thanks so much, and we'll see what the report says. So we're just calling for a report.
Unanimous, Mr. Mayor.
Unanimous.
Thank you.
Councillors, I'll take you, there's no urgent business without notice. Governance and finance reports. Donation from Griffith City Council. Councillors, the last Griffith Council meeting I joined via Zoom, and the very generous community of Griffith and their council have given us a donation. It's quite a substantial donation, and we sort of had a bit of a nut around how to best get it out there, and we've come up with distributing it to where the Blaze Aid camps were, not particularly to Blaze Aid, but to those organisations that have hosted Blaze Aid, and we've done it on a daily basis. So I think it's quite a fair way of distributing the funds, and I'm sure that Griffith will be happy with this, and I know that those community organisations will make very good use of these funds, and also use them to leverage further funds and improve facilities at their places. Do I have a mover? Councillor Ham, Councillor Wright. Any speakers? Councillor Ham.
Well, first of all, gratitude to Griffith City Council, and as with everyone who's donated towards people for our bushfire appeal, it's been gratefully accepted, and will be. And I think this is a great way to distribute it. But I in this report, isn't that incredible that we've got 459 properties registered with Blaze Aid, and 10,616 days, volunteer days of these people that have just come from all around Australia to be here to help clear and re-fence, and it just blows me away. And these people can't be living in the most comfortable positions at the moment, and every time I see anyone for Blaze Aid, it's with a smile, and they're just getting into it and doing it, and to the coordinators who just keep it running smoothly. I had heard about Blaze Aid, but to actually see it in action is really something, and congratulations to all involved there, and my thanks.
Absolutely, and I'd endorse those comments as well. It's been wonderful to see. I'll put the motion. All in favour? So it's unanimous. Thank you. 10.2 Enterprise Risk Management Framework for adoption. Councillors, there's 6 recommendations there. Would someone like to move all 6? Councillor Larder, Councillor Cross. Councillor Larder.
Yep, happy to move all 6.
Thank you. Any further comment? Put the motion. All in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. .3 Draft Gifts and Benefits Policy for Public Exhibition. This is going out on public exhibition for 28 days. 4 recommendations there. Councillor Smith. Councillor Larder. Councillor Smith.
I think it's important that the public have an opportunity to look at these policies and to comment on them, because they are designed to give visibility to everything that we do as councillors and as council staff, so that there is no thought or accusation, if you like, or doubts about the fact that council is operating according to these guidelines. And we appreciate and approve, of course, to see public comment on these issues. But I think you'll find that they are very comprehensive and cover every contingency.
Thank you. Anything further? Put the motion. All in favour? That's unanimous. 10.4 Adoption of Volunteer Framework Documents. Councillors, before when I asked for whether anybody had any conflicts of interest, I would just like to point out that I actually have completed the volunteer induction at Snowy Valleys Council, and sometimes work as a volunteer. So I would be having a non-pecuniary interest in this. and non-significant.
Okay.
Moving, Councillor Ham, Councillor Cross.
Mr. Mayor, just on that non-significant, non-pecuniary interest, I assume that you're going to participate in the debate and the vote.
I will.
And Mr. Mayor, I've also done. I will.
And we'll both hand our forms in
Yes.
for the meeting.
Okay, so we've got both councillors for the same matter. Yep.
Yes.
All in favour?
Can
I'll make just a comment.
can we speak on it?
Yes, yeah, okay. Councillor, who was the mover?
I was a mover, but happy for Councillor Pritchard to go first.
Councillor Pritchard?
Yes, I have to support this, I guess, but I'm not very happy about it because it's an extra layer of bureaucracy for our volunteers. Many of them volunteer because they're retired and maybe out of touch with the modern technology, and many of the people don't have employment and have had trouble getting through schools and things like that. And this will be quite a bureaucratic obstacle for them to cover. Will there be a liaison person in council to help people through the hurdles to get registered as a volunteer? Can they go to somebody for help?
Through the chair, Mr. Mayor, yes, there will be staff members that will assist the chairs and the council staff member associated with those groups to do that induction process.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, the library would be a perfect opportunity, perfectly placed to support people with that, with the online forms.
Thank you, Councillor Cross. Yes. Councillor Ham.
I have to agree with Councillor Pritchard in the fact that, we used to volunteer and turn up and volunteer, and, it was great. And it is incredibly bureaucratic. We have to go through, and I presume it's all come about because of litigation over the years. Having said that, I have done the induction course, and it was very quick and it was very easy. And yes, that freedom of just turning up and volunteering, I understand has gone, but we can't put council in a position that, we get sued for something, and that's about where it comes down to. So I have to endorse these documents.
Thank you, Councillor Ham. Councillor Smith.
Mr. Mayor, isn't it a case also that the whole process is aimed at protecting those people who do volunteer against damages or litigation of any sort?
It covers both of those, yes, us and them.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll put the motion all in. Oh, sorry, Councillor Cross.
I'd just like to point out that we actually have 301 registered volunteers online already, which is absolutely fantastic to see.
Councillor Lardy, you had something to say?
I was just voting yes.
Oh, thank you. All in favour? Yes, thank you. Moving on.
Unanimous, Mr. Mayor.
All unanimous. I'll tell you when it's not. How about that? I do that. Financial report 10.5. Councillor Ham. Councillor Larder.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to, I noticed there was a letter in the paper from my comments last month saying how pleased I was with the financial report, and I want to put that in context. When you look back at what our budget was going to be 9 months ago and to what it is now, I just think it's a real, it does show how closely council is watching resources and spending money and keeping it very tight. And I do agree that we have got financial concerns, there's no doubt about it, and that's why we're looking into our future in the long-term financial plan. And we will be continually updating that so that we remain a viable council. So I think it is looking like you know, we will have a surplus, and yes, that surplus is buoyed by grants. However, that is not uncommon in this financial environment in all councils. But I would ask if our CFO might be able to explain a little bit closer about how much money we're getting back from the fire disaster. It looks like some of the money is coming in, and I'd be interested in her opinion on how that's travelling.
CFO. There you are.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Ham, we have received about $900,000 on the Section 44 claim. We have still outstandings on the Section 44 claim of about 1.4 million. We've also received earlier in the year the 1.3 million from the Prime Minister's office. Overall, it leaves us short about $2.3 million of unfunded expenditure that we had during the bushfires.
And some of the expenditure is predicted income that won't come in, like water rates and things like that. Is that correct?
That is correct, and it has already not come in, as in we have already issued those water notices.
And as well as that, we there's the loss of funds for development applications for those people that have lost houses into the future for the next 3 years. Okay. All right. Any further questions? Councillor Cross.
So would it be possible for me to ask our Chief Financial Officer if she could just give us a summary of our finances at the moment, please?
CFO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Cross. The summary is on the first page of the report. It summarises that our year-to-date actual income is about $48 million and the expenditure is approximately the same. So we're breaking even at the moment. We are currently having a surplus of $4.2 million. Now, there will be adjustments. Year-end, financial year-end is nearly on us. We will have a fair few adjustments in the depreciation, particularly because we are still waiting on evaluation. And there will also be capitalisation of major projects. But it looks like we are going to make the revised budget for the full year.
Thank you, CFO. Anything further, councillors? Councillor Pritchard.
That's a very good result. I still fear that we are presently in a recession, and I fear that we'll go into a depression if and when the coronavirus hits. So we're for a long rocky road ahead, and just a caution that we try and conserve as much money as we can and not go into any projects that we don't have the funds for.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard. Anything further? Put the motion, councillors. All in favour? That's everyone, Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And thanks to the CFO for those answering those questions. Statement of investments. Councillor Ham, Councillor Cross.
Just a question for the CFO again. Now we've received our FAGS grants, the financial assistance grants, advanced payment. Is that as expected? Are we expecting some more, from the federal government? Is there anything more coming because of the bushfires? Anything in that area? Any increase at all?
CFO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Ham, this is not easy to answer. We are expecting, obviously, the Section 44 claim. That's not federal, that's state. And we will account for that in our financial statements. But otherwise, there may be some other funding forthcoming, but at this stage, I am not aware of anything.
This financial assistant grant, now that's federal money that comes in. That's correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that is correct. And this comes in regularly every year in a 50% payment and then 4 installments. And over the last few years, it's always come in early.
Okay. Oh, okay. And that will help us with our surplus by the end of the year. And is it something, have we been lobbying or advocating to try and get more money with this grant because of the bushfires?
CFO?
So you, Mr. Mayor, I think I need to defer this one to the CEO.
Sorry.
Thanks very much, through the Mayor, Councillor Ham. We generally, as a local government body for Australia, trying to lobby for an increased amount of the federal money available to local government has dropped significantly, and that's recently been reported in the local papers. It is of concern to us. We are the government that's closest to the people and doing the most on ground, and we do require a bit more assistance for that, and we've seen a significant drop over the last 10 years of the amount of assistance we get. And so that is a regular thing on the agenda. It is on the books for LG New South Wales to continue to lobby on it, and they do provide updates regularly for us for that. And also the local government professional bodies also lobby for an increase in the allocation for the FANG grants.
And it might be something that with our candidates, since with the by-election coming up, that we could mention.
Certainly is, and it ties in very well with local government constitutional recognition, which we hope to see back on the agenda in the near future.
Councillor Larder.
Mr. Mayor, I just thought I'd highlight the fact that our electorate, in fact, our council has never received any of the drought funding. It seems quite bizarre to me that during 2 significant crises, and on top of that, a drought that was felt here, that in, say, the Deputy Prime Minister's seat, there's been $2 million of allocated funding for drought, but in our Snowy Valleys Council area, there isn't anything.
That's correct.
And probably that's something we need to take up with these candidates to find out, how our that's just one avenue as to why we're being neglected here in this region.
Yep. And the drought caused the bushfire. It's a good point.
Okay. Where are we up
Do we
to?
need a notice of motion on that for you to write, or are you happy just to write off to them and ask them about it? Because I mean, it's a significant amount of money.
I think we should write another letter. Yep. Okay, that's no problem. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, could we ask the Chief Financial Officer if there is any significant changes in the investments? I'm looking at the pie chart here. There's no comparison with last month, but has there been any significant change in the way that these investments are made?
CFO.
For you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Smith, no, we haven't had any significant changes. You will see in the second table in the report what the movements are, and we have just basically reinvested in expiring investments.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. 11.1, management reports, local roads and community infrastructure program. Councillors, there's 4 recommendations there. Do I have a mover? Councillor Smith. Councillor Larder. Councillor Smith.
Yes, in relation to 11.1, I think it was, the intersection at Tumut that was the subject of such a horrific accident. Can we report any progress on getting further works done than the current works that are happening at the moment, which perhaps are quite inadequate in terms of their extent to make that intersection truly safe for people to negotiate? Are we looking at any further improvements in the near future?
Councillor Smith, it's a bit of a long bow on this report, but it does relate to roads. I think possibly we will have some, I believe Minister Toole may come down. And I believe that Mr. Tanner from the roads Roads and Maritime Service, or whatever they're called now, has been in contact with the CEO. I'll pass over to the CEO on that one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Smith, yes, I did get a phone call from Lindsay Tanner the other day, and he had the Director of Strategy and Systems and Safety here in Tumut the other day looking at that intersection. My understanding is that they are preparing some designs for some further improvements of that facility, and Mr. Tanner has asked to speak to Council at the July workshop. So we booked him in for the July workshop to talk about the Go Cup Road intersection and also the Batlow intersection there on the Snowy Mountains Highway. The Traffic Advisory Committee has also made a number of recommendations, and Mr. Tanner spoke to me about those recommendations the other day. So hopefully we will see a response on that. Those items are on Council's agenda today to consider.
That's very good. I'm sure that our people will be very happy to hear that.
Councillor Ham.
I just want to comment how pleased I am that the Gingelic public toilet's going to be upgraded, because they seriously were in need of it. Great to see.
Good. Thank you. Councillors, I'll put the motion. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Some good projects there. Draft asset management policy for public exhibition. 4 recommendations. Do I have a mover? Councillor Ham. Councillor Larder. Councillor Ham.
Just great to have this as normal. It'd be great if people can read it, make any comments as needed. Very important. Thank you for putting it up.
Thank you, Councillor Ham. Any further speakers? Put the motion. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Tumut Aerodrome access policy for adoption. Councillor Ham, Councillor Cross. Councillor Ham.
I'm happy to have Councillor Larder speak on this.
Councillor Larder.
Oh, it's just common sense. So there's nothing really further to add. It's just part of appropriate policy for the aerodrome.
Just one point. I do notice that probably the submission summary probably is not cat's eyes but cat heads, or maybe just even caltrops. Just a small point. I'll put the motion. Yeah, Councillor Ham.
It just did remind me. I know that Maroondah Airport got $4.2 million this last week, and we got 152,000, which is better than nothing, but disappointing because of. But there's a reason for that, Mr. Mayor.
Look, as I understand it, it's 50-50 funding, and we just don't have the additional funds to put in. Is that correct, Mr. CEO?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. The funding guidelines required 50% funding. We reported that to Council, and we're using the whole of our reserve to advance that matter. Hopefully we can advocate with the politicians to look at further improvements due to the use of that facility for fighting fires, and they will hopefully give us some dispensation for the fact that we don't have additional reserves to match the 50-50 funding, and we'll give that a go.
And councillors, I forwarded through an ABC story today, online story on the Tumut Airport for you. So, so we're out there on the front foot, but just the funding. Well, and look, we've got 152,000 as of last Saturday, which was more than we had Friday. So it's a start, but it's only a bit over 1%. So we've got to keep working.
And the thing to remember too is that we've also got to include in those infrastructure upgrades the water main being put on out to the airport. Now we do have some money, I think, in the water fund, so that's another infrastructure item that we need to tick off pretty quickly, because it is a difficulty loading those tankers from tankers.
Thank you. Well, that's something we can consider, and that might be another bout of the 50-50 funding we can use.
So through the Mayor, Councillor Larder, we are going to include that water pipeline as part of the advocacy document. Critical infrastructure.
Councillors, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Oh, Councillor Cross, did you want to say something first?
Just wanted to ask that, as I understand it, the aerodrome is being used for the helicopter for the hospital whilst it's being repurposed. Is there any possibility of getting funding or making that a case for that, to get more funding for the airport for the upgrade, given it's being used as a helicopter pad as well?
It's always an option, so we'll keep it in mind. Thank you, Councillor Cross. I'll put the motion now. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Councillors, 11.4, Snowy Valleys Council Local Strategic Planning Statement, draft LSPS for adoption. 3 recommendations. Councillor Larder, Councillor Ham, Councillor Larder.
Just happy to move the 3.
Nothing further. Anyone else? The motion, all in favour? Carried, unanimous. (11.5) Disbanding of Regional Health Service Committee. Mover, Councillor Cross, Councillor Ham, Councillor Cross.
I think at the time it was with the new hospital in the wings, it was a very timely that we had this kind of committee. As we progressed and met further, it became quite clear that it wasn't going to, it really wasn't doing what it should do, and it became much clearer that we should actually join in with the hospital and with the local health advisory committee that was in place already as a great partnership, because health is not really Snowy Valley's core business. And I went to my first meeting last week, and it was actually really good to be involved in the discussions and to learn what was happening on the health front.
Thank you. And I don't think we should forget that we still need to continue to be very much advocating for the removal of the ambulance station up to the new hospital site.
Yes, yeah, and that's something that through that committee we can progress all of those things that we think are important.
Councillor Pritchard.
Maybe I'm missing something. Is this getting? I don't think we should be getting rid of a Regional Health Services Committee. For example, with the COVID virus problem, there's this building being put down at the temporary building put down near the railway precinct regarding the coronavirus testing. I still don't know, and I understand it's being called a respiratory clinic, but there's no sign down there for it, so we're not quite sure what the truth of the matter is. I have problems if they are calling it a respiratory unit, that people who are not COVID suspects will be going down there at times with some urgency to have their respiratory problems fixed. So people that have got an exacerbation of their chronic bronchitis or some immunological problems or severe asthma might be, in other words, people who have got some health disability, to go down to an area where they're testing for coronavirus puts them at greater risk than they would be if they went to the normal hospital. And so I think that needs to be clarified. And I don't know how we haven't, as I understand it, had any formal information from the health service. I think we need to keep involved with the area health service and keep them aware of what our problems are.
This committee, this recommendation is not about us not being involved with Murrumbidgee Health. Hopefully we'll be more involved with the Murrumbidgee Health, but the fact that this committee was basically almost redundant and not meeting, so you know, it's always good to have some sort of a renaissance, and hopefully that will be the case with renewed enthusiasm, especially going forward with our new hospital. Councillor Cross.
It became quite evident that people were not attending. I think people judge with their feet, you know. So it really was at cross purposes, and I think we've got a much better voice if we're actually part of that health committee that is dedicated to health. And I would be really grateful if councillors who have serious concerns can give them to me so I can take it to LHAC to discuss and get clarification around those. I understand what Councillor Pritchard is saying about it being a respiratory clinic, but I would also like to add that within Tumut, we are the lowest uptakers of being tested for COVID. 5% of our population has lined up for that, and that is the lowest across the whole of New South Wales. So I would urge people, if they do have feeling unwell, that they do go down, because it is a respiratory, as I understand it, it is a respiratory virus.
Thank you.
I can't help but object to putting people with chronic lung disease down at a COVID virus testing place where they will have an increased risk of getting the COVID virus. The virus hasn't hit us yet, but it's going to hit us and hit us hard. And I think to have confusion about where you go to have a test done or where you go to have your serious asthma attack, I think was wrong.
And I'd agree with you, Councillor Pritchard, but that's a separate issue to the one we've got here on the recommendation. But it's certainly something that I'm happy to sit down with you and we can get a letter away to Murrumbidgee Health or whoever the body are.
I have no confidence in them setting up this unit down there without us being told what it's all about, without having a...
Perhaps we can write to the Health Minister. Councillor Ham.
I'm actually going to vote against disbanding it. I think it's a different voice than LHAC, and even if this committee was to only meet twice a year in an advisory capacity, I think it just does give a wider viewpoint on health. And yeah, I thought I went twice and I actually got a lot out of it, and I thought it was quite wide, and to disband an advisory group that is actually led by council, I think is a bit of a loss. So I think, yeah, I will be voting against this.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Cross.
I think if we are going to keep it going, we need to really think clearly about who should be on that committee so that it can have that broader voice, because at the time it did not have that broad voice. We didn't have an Aboriginal voice in there. We do have on LHAC. We didn't have a voice from disadvantaged people. There are a whole range of people who did not have a voice. So I think if we're going to keep it, and I'm happy to keep it, I think maybe twice a year meeting would be a good way, but we need to think clearly about who is on it.
And I wonder, with our health and education bushfire recovery meeting that is still happening or maybe about to be dissolved, whether that will transform into this sort of committee.
So you're happy to vote against it, or would you like to?
I will vote against disbanding, yes, because I think, yeah, for reasons as stated.
Or would you consider an amendment or a notice of motion later on?
if there was a motion at all, it would be to further investigate disbanding or alternatives.
Mr. Mayor, can I suggest you may wish to consider deferring this item if the councillors would like to have more discussion on it, and we can put it back onto our workshop schedule to discuss further and provide the same report back or an amended report with further information back to a future meeting.
Mover and seconder, are you happy to defer?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
So the motion is now that we defer.
For
Yeah.
consideration of item 11.5 on the agenda to a future council meeting.
Yes. Both happy with that? Same mover and seconder?
Yep.
Okay. Put the motion, all in favour? Councillor Pritchard?
Thank you.
Yes, I think we should address it immediately. Disbanding it will come back with another talk fest, and I think that we need to have a.
So my question to you is, are you voting for or against the motion that we just defer it?
I think you put the motion and see what happens.
Well, I've got a motion now that we defer. That's what I've got. So I'll take that as a no. So
we need to put the motion.
I've put the motion that we defer.
So through the chair, if I may just clarify, that's not deferring the committee, that's deferring the report to a future council meeting.
So I've got Councillor Ross for, Councillor Larder for, Councillor Smith for, Councillor Ham for, Councillor Wright for, and Councillor Pritchard again.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, and I'll vote for. The motion's passed, not unanimous. Moving on. Thank you, councillors. Minutes of the Batlow Development League. Councillors, we've got 4 recommendations there. Councillor Smith.
Yes, I'd like to just.
Hang on, need a seconder. Councillor Cross, thank you so much. Councillor Smith.
Couple of points that I'd like to speak to. Recommendation 3, they recommended that council proceed with a planned business case for the Batlow Cannery site, which we can't at the moment do. The council support Batlow Development League in seeking funds to secure as use of the rail corridor from Batlow Caravan Park to the Batlow Apple site. I think that's a very good move, that we encourage the Batlow Development League to seek those sort of funds for projects that are specifically related to Batlow. And if they can organise funds themselves, then it would be a very good thing for Batlow and for the area, or the LGA generally. So, and the other one, point 4, that we make application to the owners of the electrical substation to be demolished. Well, I think we'd all agree with that and happily accept that. That we seek funding, the point 4 there, recommendation for, that we seek external funding to undertake an assessment of the vacant former cannery site in order to establish and evaluate the range of potential development opportunities available. I'm not sure whether that's a recommendation that we are able to handle at the moment. I'd like to know what other councillors think.
Well, Councillor Ham.
I was just going to ask whether the CEO might talk on that, things like that point 3.3, the cannery office building used as tourist information centre. Are these things in the mix? Are we, like, these are good ideas, but how are these being developed?
CEO.
Through the chair, Mr. Mayor, I'll hand this across to our Executive Director of Corporate and Community, Mr. Holton.
Mr. Holton.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair. Those recommendations from the Batlow Development League were made at the meeting. but they haven't been through a process of broader community consultation in relation to those recommendations. And you know, I've already been part of conversations with other groups like the Batlow Rotary Club, who also have an idea for how the former cannery office be used. So there are a range of competing ideas out there in the community that are worthy of consideration, but would require, I believe, a bit more investigation as to what is possible on the site. So recommendation 4 is a recommendation that I included there, that we seek external funding to actually undertake an assessment of the various portions of that land to determine what can happen in those places, because as we know, there is also some contamination of the site with asbestos at various places. And I think the site is worthy of further investigation so that we may actually be able to you know, put some ideas to the community for further consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Holt. Councillor Ham.
So we did have quite a bit of money for business case for this cannery. Is that money still available?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, given that the cost of demolishing and cleaning up the site was following the bushfires was far in excess of what was budgeted for originally. All of the money allocated to the site, including the money that was allocated to the business plan, has been expended in the project to clean up the site.
Thank you. Anything else, councillors? Councillors, I'll put the motion. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. 12.2 minutes of the Development League. This is their June meeting. Once again, 3 recommendations. Councillor Smith.
Yep.
And Councillor Cross. Councillor Smith.
There are 4 recommendations on my copy of that. Did you say there were 3?
I've got 3.
There are 4 on mine.
There's three parts, Councillor Smith, with the third part having 4 subparts.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Yes, I was looking at the 4th subheading, and that is that the Batlow Tumut Rail Trail be placed as a priority on the Snowy Valleys Council's recovery advocacy plan, and that BDL to continually monitor the success of the Tumbarumba Rosewood Rail Trail. Well, that's, I guess, a matter for them if they want to monitor that. That's not something that we would need to have any resolutions about or to accept particularly. But I'd like to make it known and note that through the mayoral minute today that the Tumut to Batlow Rail Trail has been discussed and has been considered by council, and that in fact I guess deals with that point 4 of number 3.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Ham.
Yeah, I'll just back Councillor Smith up on that, and it certainly is like other trails around in the district, that it's certainly very much being considered, and it's not being taken lightly at all.
Thank you, Councillor Ham. Councillor Wright.
So yeah, so I'm, with Councillor Ham there, that everybody knows I'm very much an advocate for the rail trails, and I'd love to see the Batlow Rail Trail go ahead, but I'd also like to make sure that we do as we said we would do, and make sure that we ensure that the Tumbarumba Rosewood one is fully utilised in a year's time. But I think we should always keep it in the back of our mind that it's on the advocacy plan. So yeah, people should know that we are really still for it in lots of ways, in some way or other.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Any other councillors? Councillors, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Oh, Councillor Pritchard, sorry.
Let's not confuse the matters regarding the so-called Batlow Tumut rail trail. I don't think it's got much to do with Batlow nor with Tumut. I think it's a matter for the Gilmore Valley. It's the Gilmore Valley rail or a bicycle trail, basically, that we're talking about. And I think it's something that has not got much support in the Gilmore Valley. And I went to the last election saying I was opposed to it, and I retain that position until they can. It's up to the Gilmore Valley people to change their mind if they want it supported. It's their part of our shire, and you know, I don't think outside groups should be trying to railroad the Gilmore Valley.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard, and certainly with a detailed and independent business plan, all those people will have a chance to have their say, and the financial viability of such will be explored, as well as the cost. Councillor Larder.
I'll just make the point, just for clarification, that I can't personally vote in favour of those unless they're individualised, because it's saying that it will give priority to that project. And as much as I endorse the gaining of further information and a proper study on costing, I don't advocate it for it to be a priority until we have all the information. So I can't make a judgment on that.
Do you want, councillors, do you want to move those, to do those individually? 1, 2, 3.
I'll move that way.
Move in a second. Happy with that?
I'm happy for it to go as it is, because it's not a decision that we're making to do anything. It's simply a recommendation that we consider.
My question to you, Councillor Smith, is: are you happy to move for us to put number 1, and then number 2, and then number 3, or do you want to move all 3 together?
I'd like to move all 3 together.
Your choice. Okay, we'll put all 3 together. All in favour? Against? Okay, so it's passed with 2 voting against, Councillor Pritchard and Councillor Larder. Moving on. Minutes of the committee meeting. Disability Inclusion and Access Reference Group. Councillor Ham, Councillor Cross.
Mr. Mayor, I attended this meeting and it was by Zoom, which was very, very effective. It was excellent. We had people from, Cancoban all the way up to Gubagandra. No, I think in Canberra actually, being part of this. The DIAG group wanted to come and speak to council, and they are going to put some, I don't know what you'd say, put councils in awkward situations, so we too know what it's like to have impaired movement, impaired sight, impaired hearing. So that'll be very interesting. And we had a couple of new people who joined the committee, and they have got tremendous ideas for how we can make Snowy Valleys Council a lot more inclusive. It's very positive.
That's great. Any other comments? Put the motion. All in favour? Carried. Unanimous. Cancoban Couva meetings. Cancoban Community Committee meeting. Councillor Smith, Councillor Ham. 3 recommendations.
Can I speak about the number 3?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Following the discussion earlier in terms of the 355 committees, there is, to approve the UCAN Youth Festival, I would certainly recommend that we do approve that, because it is going to be a very positive thing for the community. And they're very excited about it, and a lot of work's going into getting that happening. The fact that it's come under the CUVA committee structure, well, it's already happened, and we can't do anything about that now. So I hope that we can, in fact, pass that for their sakes, so that that festival can happen for them and give a boost to the Cancoban community.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor, Mr. CEO.
Mr. Mayor, may I just make a comment that item 3 that Councillor Smith spoke about, Council may want to consider a couple more words on the end of that, being that so long as we can comply with the COVID restrictions, don't know what those will be in September this year. I think it's good to be pre-planning for that. However, if the restrictions at the time don't allow for that to occur, then I think we should just cater for that in the resolution.
Mover and seconder, happy with that?
Yes.
Councillor Ham? Not happy?
No, I'm happy. I just wanted
That's good.
just in the report in here, CUVA contacted Justin Clancy office asking for a $10,000 grant for the painting above the shopping centre around the walkway. People may be aware it was all peeling, and Justin Clancy was able to get a one-off grant for that, and which was very well received.
That's good. Okay, I'll put the motion. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Local Traffic Committee. Councillors, we've got 3 recommendations there, with the 3rd recommendation having A to H. Do I have a mover? Councillor Wright. Councillor Cross. Councillor Wright.
He's on mute, but can we go into committee?
We can go into committee if you'd like to move that way. Seconder. Councillor Smith, all in favour? Okay, we're in committee. Who wants to say first? Councillor Ham. How
Oh
about
no,
you?
I'll leave it up to Councillor Wright. You were having a good chat there.
Yeah, I attended that meeting, of course, and was involved in a very long, really good discussions on everything in there. And I must say, Anthony runs a very good meeting, and he's been a great traffic officer. Been terrific. And we should commend him on the work he's been putting in. He's been really a really good find. Yeah, so, and look, everything there looks pretty good. I reckon it was a good meeting, and we considered all those things very carefully, with plenty of good, robust discussion. I recommend it.
Councillor Ham.
Oh, sorry, Councillor. I would just like to talk to the, sorry, you've just blacked out again there, but 4.2.1, investigate the installation of roadside barriers to inhibit vehicles leaving the Toomer Road at the crest of Board Hill. I'd like to talk to the Director of Infrastructure about that, because investigate is not good enough. They've, in the past 3 years, I think 5 cars have gone over. It's an incredibly steep hill, and the fact that no one's died, and that fellow who went over just the other day, it was remarkable he is not dead. And then if he wasn't killed in the accident, then it was freezing and he had to crawl his way up the hill, and how he made it alive. I mean, we're talking about a barrier, that's all. And if we go to investigate, or can't we just put something temporarily there?
Director, Executive Director.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the question, Councillor Ham. Yeah, I went and had a look at it last week myself, after hearing the report. Yeah, agree. It is a very steep embankment. It is along a straight section of road, which was interesting. I understand that the most recent accident was in regard to a vehicle avoiding a kangaroo and running off the road and coming down the bank. I suppose in regard to implementing traffic safety initiatives, we do need the support of the relevant agencies. So I'd recommend that we progress that investigation, get that support, and then proceed with the installation, rather than doing the install without getting the endorsement of the Transport for New South Wales and the other agencies. I very much understand there is urgency behind this, so I'll make sure that gets pushed ahead as quick as it possibly can.
And when you say that, does that mean 12 months, 6 months, 3 months?
I'd like to think 3 months from now to when we install.
Thanks very much.
You better put that in your diary, Councillor Ham.
It's in there. It's done.
I'm sure. Councillors, anything further?
Just in regard to the intersection there at Capper Street, I think it would be remiss not to thank Dr. Joe McGurr for his very passionate pleas in Parliament to the relevant minister to take that intersection seriously, and he did that in a very constructive way, and I'm hopeful that we'll see some benefit from that.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah.
Councillor Cross.
The incident or the accident was captured fully on CCTV footage by the brewery, which I think adds weight to the seriousness that we face with that intersection. So I'm hoping that will become part of their report or part of their decision, that they look at it.
I'm sure that'll be up to the coroner.
Yeah, it is with the coroner, as I understand it.
Councillor, who was next? Councillor Smith.
4.1.2 request that Transport for New South Wales realign Go Cup Road so that it intersects the Snowy Mountains Highway in the vicinity of the Tumut sale yards. I'd like to ask the question, are we in fact on board with that idea? Is that a preferred option?
Look, it's been on the books for a very, very long time, and there will be people in favour of it and people against it, but I certainly think it should be considered in a whole mix of things.
Yeah, but the reason for my question is we're asked to accept these recommendations, and I just want to make sure that we're in fact in agreement on that.
Look, I think, Councillor Smith, anything that can make that intersection safer should be investigated and should be done with haste. I think it's been too long, and it's been unsatisfactory what's been done in the past. We need to do, to push hard on this one.
Yeah, agree.
Councillors, we're in committee. Would someone like to move that we go out of committee? Councillor Ham, Councillor Wright. All in favour? That's unanimous. Okay, so did we have a mover and a seconder for this one? We did.
Councillor Wright and Councillor Cross.
Thank you so much. Anything further? Put the motion, all in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Minutes of the Tumberfest Annual General Meeting, 29th of April. A most successful Tumberfest, and congratulations to the committee. Mover. Councillor Ham. Councillor Wright.
I agree with you, Mr. Mayor. It was so successful, and I consider myself very fortunate to be in such a proactive and positive committee. It's fantastic.
It's always good to be on one of those committees.
Totally.
Especially with a result like this. Anything further? Put the motion. All in favour? Oh, Councillor Wright, you want to say something?
I just wanted to say, I thought everybody should know that they donated some of the funds towards their profits, towards the bushfire recoveries, which I thought was a terrific thing for them to do.
That's a great thing. Thank you. Put the motion, all in favour? It's unanimous. 12.7, Tumberfest Committee meeting. Councillor Ham again. Councillor Lata. Anything?
So these minutes lead on to the next minutes as well. And this is about Tumberfest moving from being a section 355 committee into an incorporated committee. And there are questions there with needing clarifications about, you know, who owns what, where the money goes, fees from council. And thank you to the people involved on council that were able to offer advice with this. And I think you'll see from the next minutes that the answers that came back were very favourable. And I may as well steal the thunder for the next committee, and is that Tumberfest Committee in an extraordinary meeting have decided to initiate the process of becoming an incorporated association.
Thank you. All in favour? Carried. Which brings us to 12.8. Councillor Ham, are you moving that way?
Oh,
yeah. And a seconder. Councillor Wright. Got more to say, Councillor Ham?
No, I think it's a very good idea, good move, and it's you know, just to have a festival gain so much of their own ability that they can stand on their own two feet. It just reflects what a top committee it is.
Certainly, yeah, absolutely. Outstanding result. Put the motion. All in favour? It's carried. Thank you. Councillors, that brings us to the end of our ordinary meeting. Councillors, the Local Government Act provides that council may close to the public any part of the meeting that deals with matters of a confidential nature. Section 10.2 lists such matters. The grounds on which a meeting is closed to the public must be specified in the decision to close the meeting, recorded in the minutes of the meeting. Councillors, I have a recommendation here that council move into confidential to consider the matters listed in the confidential section of the agenda in accordance with section 10.2 of the Local Government Act 1993 for the reasons specified. The Batlow Showground resurfacing project, as it's of a confidential nature under the Local Government Act. Do I have a mover to move into confidential? Councillor Smith, Councillor Wright, all in favour? Councillors will now move into confidential. Thank you.
Councillors, I will just move you into the breakout room, and if we just hold in the breakout room for a little while before we start discussion on the confidential item, that would be appreciated.